AT&T provides edge-to-edge intelligence, covering virtually every part of your finance business. And so if someone tries to breach your firewall in London and you start to panic, don't. Because your CTO says we've got allies on the outside and security algorithms on the inside. And that way you can focus on expanding into Eastern Europe. And that makes the branch managers happy, and yes, that's the branch managers happy. AT&T provides edge-to-edge intelligence. It can do so much for your business, the list goes on and on. That's the power of and. And when this happens, you'll know how to quickly...
When I was confronted with the images yesterday, I was appalled that they appeared on my page, but I believe then and now that I am not either of the people in that photo. If I were to listen to the voices calling on me to resign my office today, I could spare myself from the difficult path that lies ahead. I cannot in good conscience choose the path that would be easier for me in an effort to duck my responsibility to reconcile. That same year, I did participate in a dance contest in San Antonio, in which I darkened my face as part of a Michael Jackson costume. I look back now and regret that I did not understand the harmful legacy of an action like that.
You said that the competition in San Antonio was a dance competition?
Yes.
And it was that you danced the moonwalk?
That's right.
Are you still able to moonwalk?
Inappropriate circumstances.
My wife says inappropriate circumstances. I had the shoes, I had a glove, and I used just a little bit of shoe polish to put under on my cheeks.
Democratic Virginia Governor Ralph Northam during his press conference on Saturday, a day after he apologized for being in a 1984 medical school yearbook photo that shows a man dressed in blackface and another as a Klansman. The photo ran alongside other pictures and personal information about Northam, who was a medical student at the time. Joining us now, President and CEO of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, former GOP counsel for the House Oversight Committee, opinion writer for the Daily Beast and author of the book E Pluribus One, Sophia Nelson is with us, and historian, author of The Soul of America, and Rogers Professor of the Presidency at Vanderbilt University, John Meacham. He's an NBC News and MSNBC contributor. John Heilman, Eddie Glaude Jr., Elise Jordan, all still with us as well.
Derek Johnson, thanks so much for being with us. If Northam refuses to resign, what should Democrats across the country do?
Well, I'm the head of the NAACP, a nonpartisan organization, so I can't speak for the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party. But for African Americans, we will continue to put pressure for him to step down. It was one of the most bizarre weekends that I have witnessed. Yeah. I really believe he should have stopped on Friday, taken responsibility, yes, and then began to consider options. What happened Saturday was an unfortunate display and rather tone deaf to what the impact really is.
Yeah, and you know, Sophia, we talk about grace, and of course, everyone, we would hope that we move towards a more perfect society, and where social media and sort of these Twitter mobs can't immediately take over a topic and demand vigilante justice. But at the same time, it is awfully hard to show grace to a man that first admits, then denies, then tries to explain, then gives pro tips on applying black shoe polish to white people's faces.
You know, Joe, I think what's important for everyone right now is to take a pause and put some context to this. It's been discussed earlier this morning on this show. Eddie always does a great job. But, you know, this year in Virginia, 2019, marks the 400th anniversary of slavery. 1619, when the first slaves came to our shores in the Commonwealth in the Hampton Roads area, Jamestown being the settlement. But that means something. We have a commemoration committee. There'll be a lot of activities in the summer talking about what that means to us in America in 2019, 400 years later. And what we know that it means, to your question, Joe, is that when this country started half slave and half free, it meant that we started, as Condi Rice once said, with a birth defect. Governor Northam's press conference, if that's what you want to call it, on Saturday was, to me, something that really showed the divide of how our white citizens, even with the best of intentions, good people who do good things, are clueless about the impact of race and blackface and things that African Americans understand intuitively are wrong and offensive and hurtful. Here was a man who's a medical doctor who seemed to be clueless about talking about putting shoe polish on his face, imitating Michael Jackson, after he denied, by the way, that it couldn't have been him in the picture. Joe, if somebody called you up tomorrow and said, Joe, we got a picture of you in 1986 of you in a Klan robe, you would know immediately that was not you. You'd be like, hell, it is. It wasn't me. You wouldn't have to think about it. You wouldn't have to think twice about it. You wouldn't have to analyze it and call your friends to see if they thought it was you. It's bogus.
That's why it just does. I mean, it just, so much of this makes such little sense. And John Meacham, let's put some historical context, not only on what happened with Northam over the weekend, but what's happened over the past decade. In 2008, the United States of America was the first majority white country to elect a black man as president. And it seemed in 2008 and again in 2012 that there was proof of that quote that you use at the beginning of your book, that the arc of civilization is, forever upward. That there are some detours and we have some twists and turns, but forever upward. But it's hard to look at what Northam has done, and it's hard to make decisions on race without the context of the incredible steps back we have taken since Donald Trump has become president of the United States, whether it's Charlottesville, whether it's a Muslim ban, whether it's a Muslim registry, whether it's him attacking a judge in Indiana because his parents are Hispanic. I mean, there is a laundry list, and it goes on a mile long for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Robert Penn Warren once said that history, like nature, knows no leaps except leaps backward, maybe, which I've never quite agreed with, but it's relevant here. Our progress is conditional. It's contingent. Nothing is forever. It's why the other phrase from the 19th century is so important, associated with Jefferson and with Jackson. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And we have to be eternally vigilant. We see that in all the spheres of life that the president affects that you just mentioned. We see it in moments where there needs to be racial sensitivity and understanding of the fact that words and actions have consequences. There are ways for governors to begin processes of reconciliation without being the governor. And I think when you lose Doug Wilder and Terry McAuliffe and your congressional delegation, the drama is probably over.
Derek, this is Eddie Glaude. Given the spectacle of this past weekend, of the last couple of days, we have the prospects of Justin Fairfax ascending to the governorship in the state of Virginia. What do you make of this possibility? Do you think that he can continue to pursue a progressive agenda in the state of Virginia? So what do you make of this succession, as it were, that's before us at this moment, or possibly before us?
Justin is a very sharp individual. He fought very hard to get elected as lieutenant governor, despite the party not supporting him initially. He fought in a general election, despite the fact that he was left off many of the sample ballots. So he understands how to navigate the political landscape. He's true to the community from which he comes. He's clear about what's important to be a true American, and he will represent the state of Virginia, I think, in a really good way. And no, Eddie, you are from Mississippi. I'm a resident of Mississippi.
That's right.
Joe, you are a son of the South. And we all know that it is a hard reality for Southern whites to really address the concept of the Confederacy, slavery, and race relations. And that's a hard reality that many Southern whites have to address and confront, that the Confederacy was a treasonous activity, that much of the culture around that people must denounce or move away from in order for us to move forward as a nation. And that's what we just seen in this Northam scenario. But with Justin, he wouldn't come to the table with that baggage. He possibly could be a person to heal what is taking place in Virginia. And I look forward to his governorship.
Sophia, Elise Jordan here. You were speaking very movingly about the history of Virginia when it comes to slavery and race. And just in 2017, we saw the horrible protest, the horrible KKK rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. And what does it say about Governor Northam that he lived through that? I believe he would have been campaigning at that point. He saw the footage, which I just saw the footage again this weekend, watching Spike Lee's incredible movie Black Klansman, which if it doesn't get a Best Picture bid, he has been robbed. But the footage of that moment in Charlottesville, what does it say about the governor that this was his response over the past weekend?
Well, I think it says that he ceded his moral authority, and every leader, and we talked about this with our current president of the United States, you know, our founding fathers, and John will back me up on this, believe that we needed a moral and virtuous government and leaders, right? Now, we can debate what those terms moral and virtuous meant when 13 of our first presidents of the first 18 or so had slaves, right? So moral and virtuous, however, means something. And I think in the context of Charlottesville, we got a wake-up call in the Commonwealth, which, again, is the heart of the Confederacy during the Civil War, the beginning of slavery. Remember, Virginia is the first colony, 1607, right? And so the reality is that Charlottesville reminds us that there are still vestiges of that in the Commonwealth. And I think that Ralph Northam was very eloquent talking about this and how ugly it was and what he would do as governor. And they actually painted Ed Gillespie, the Republican, as a racist, if you will, maybe in softer terms, but because he was, you know, maybe moderate on the Confederate monuments and whether they should go or stay, he was maybe flip-flopping or wavering a little bit. And I think that Northam now, as we look back, we know that here's a guy that said in his press conference on Saturday, at least, that it was commonplace wherever he was hanging out for people to be in Klan robes or blackface or talking about Coon Man. I don't know who he was hanging out with, but I was in high school in 1984. That's how old I am. And I know where I grew up, that wasn't commonplace at all. So I think that he ceded his moral authority, which is the answer to your question.
All right. Well put. As we celebrate Black History Month, Derek, you wanted to highlight a pivotal leader in the civil rights movement, Ella Baker. As the granddaughter of a slave,